Dirk, when did you realize you were good?
Maybe I never realized, but
Dirk's like, actually, I'm not good.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel
Hello and welcome. My name is Zoe, and I am so excited to be interviewing exceptional Illini from all across campus so that you can get an inside look into what it's like to be a student at Illinois. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a video, and also let us know in the comments who you'd like to hear from next. Today's interview is a little bit of a special edition. So, Illinois is great at many things, but one thing that we just happen to be incredible at is esports. We have 10 different esports teams, and I had the privilege of sitting down with AJ and Dirk from our League of Legends team, and they told me all about their recent Collegiate Championship win, which means that we are literally #1 in the country. So I really hope that you enjoy this interview.
AJ and Dirk, thank you so much for joining me, and let's just get right into it. So I want to have you both introduce yourselves, tell me who you are, where you're from, your year in school, and your major. Okay, who's first?
AJ, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So my name is AJ Taylor. I am a second-year PhD student in food science and human nutrition with a focus on researching the metabolites in biochemical properties of chocolate, necessarily in fermentation. So that's kind of my research. But I am also currently the head coach for the Illinois Academy League of Legends team, as well as then I am also the president of Illini Esports for this next coming up 2020 to 2021 year. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's good. My name is Dirk Zarnecki. I'm I guess senior now going into accounting. Going to probably pursue my master's, get my CPA, all that sort of stuff. But regarding Illini Esports and whatnot, I'm the vice president of competitive last year and then this year again. And furthermore, I played on the League of Legends team when we went to LA not this past year, but the year before. And I've been a part of the organization for 2 to 3 years now, working as an analyst and then as a player. Yep.
Awesome. So you guys are pretty much like a big deal when it comes to this organization. They really sent their best folks when they responded to me. So that's really awesome.
Yeah. Try to do the best we could. Awesome.
That's great. So if you could talk a little bit about what brought you to Illinois. I mean, AJ, you're a PhD student, obviously. So
right.
What made you decide to come to Illinois?
Right. So I've lived in Illinois since I was 10. So that's about 15 years or so now, which is kind of crazy to me. But I'd always wanted to be a food scientist myself personally. And I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do as an undergraduate. I unfortunately decided I wanted to be a food scientist at the age of 17, and I was graduating as a senior. So it was a little late to apply to specific colleges and universities and stuff like that. So I ended up going to a 2-year a 2-year community college to just get an associate's, get more kind of experience in what exactly college was. And then after that, I did a bachelor's in biochemistry with a minor in theater at Judson University in Elgin, Illinois. So,
wow.
And then I knew that I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to go into food science. And so I applied to multiple different universities, and out of the 5 or 6 universities that I applied to, I only heard back from 2 of them. One of them was University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the other one was Illinois. When I then, as a master's student, you typically have to, when you're going for research, you will try to email professors and kind of get their interest in, like, from there. From each university, I emailed about like 5 or 6 professors. I heard literally nothing back from any of the Wisconsin-Madison ones. And I heard every single professor I emailed at U of I emailed me back within 2 to 3 days. So for me, it was kind of a very simple choice as to who exactly, seemed like they wanted to talk with me, kind of be with me and work with me as a student necessarily. So that's how I kind of ended up at Illinois. And then I got my master's and transitioned from a master's now into a PhD program. So
very cool. Yeah, that sounds like Illinois professors for you. They're pretty awesome. Cool. Dirk, what's your story?
Well, currently I'm in Dallas, Texas, and that's where I grew up. So I've been a Texas boy for a long time. But the reason I ended up at Illinois was because summers like these where they're really hot, I didn't want to be here anymore. So yet again, here I am. But that being said, I wanted a colder environment. I wanted the high level of the caliber of like the accounting program, because I knew I wanted to do accounting. We had like one of the best ones in the nation. And then furthermore, I had seen on the Big Ten broadcast, the League of Legends stuff, because I played League of Legends as a kid and going through high school, and I'd seen it and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, what if I could just, it wasn't really a part of really like, I chose academics first, obviously, but then it was like, I want to do something fun on the side in my time there. And so I was like, if I can have a place that supports players like that, or people are at least getting engaged in that sort of scene, it's really cool. And so, yeah.
Awesome. So take me all the way back to the first video game that you ever played as a kid. Like what is your journey as a gamer?
I have two older brothers. One is 10 years older than me. One is about 5 to 6 years older than me. So they had always played video games like when in their middle school and high school years. And so I had kind of grown up in the idea of like playing on N64s and playing with, the Game Boys that were handed down necessarily. Like I got Pokemon Blue, I think I want to say is probably my first one. It may or may not be, but Pokemon Blue on the like original Game Boy, kind of rectangular box basically. And that was my brother's at the time. And so anything that my brothers got, it was that at some point it was going to be passed down to me once I got out of the next one basically. So it's like They got the Game Boy Advance and then I got the Game Boy Advance, and then they got the Game Boy SP and then I got that, and then they went off to college and stuff like that. And so I continued to explore video games and going into GameCube and Xbox and PlayStation and everything that I could get my hands on basically. And that's kind of how I ended up doing it. And about, I would say 9 years ago, I was playing with some friends at just like a sleepover or something like that. And they had on the background, there was this login music that this guy was playing for League of Legends. And Bosch probably knows this, but it's the Diana login that is this, they would have these music while you were trying to log into the actual game itself. And it was super melodic and kind of like somber, but it was like really like piano background, like really beautiful and kind of touching. And I was just like, I didn't really notice it at first, but then as it kept like replaying, I was like, okay, what is that music? And he's like, oh yeah, it's the League of Legends login music. And I was like, the what? Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean like this? And so he showed me the game. And from there, like, I just kind of fell in love with the idea of this PvP type style, game that really encompassed everything that I wanted. It was competitive, but you had to do a lot of thinking behind it. There was a lot of mechanical outplays that you had to be like better than your opponent, but you also had to like outthink your opponent. So it just combined everything that I really loved about gaming, and it gave me this like rush, this competitive, like I loved just like trying to be better than the other player necessarily, or like winning as a team, or like sometimes when you're just losing, but your team is carrying you on their backs, like it's that good feeling that you get from being part of a team as in League of Legends necessarily. So that just got me obsessed for the past 9 years, unfortunately.
Hey, there are worse things to be obsessed with. That's
very true. That's what I always told my parents. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it just makes me smile to hear about like the good feeling that comes from accomplishing something as a team. That's such a cool thing. So yeah. Dirk, tell me about your experience gaming.
I had pretty much almost identical start to like the whole gaming thing, I guess, because I think a lot of people really start with like Nintendo or Pokemon or something like that. And so I remember I was sitting on like my bench, like right outside my window with my mom, and for whatever reason, my like aunt had bought me a Game Boy Color, and it had like a little Pikachu on the side, so it was like really cool. And it was like it had Pokemon Crystal. I think was the only game that I had for a while. And I just got my start with playing Pokemon. I was obsessed with Pokemon for like when I was in lower school and whatnot, or junior high even, but Pokemon's always kind of been with me. But then I sort of started transition into more online gaming, started out like with World of Warcraft with some friends and stuff like that, and sort of started to transition into more online, more with friends, more just greater people, more community, right? Because I liked interactions with others, with teammates, with other people, just everything, right? I thought that everything that involved somebody else was like super unpredictable, and it led to new experiences. And it was really cool to see how I could just be like immersed in this whole world with a bunch of other people all across the nation and stuff or world even. But yeah.
Yeah. A huge community worldwide. That's a great way to connect with, people that as well as just the entire world. That's really awesome. So as someone who knows very little about League of Legends beyond the research that I did for this, tell a complete beginner what League of Legends is.
Right. So it's a 5v5 based game where the idea of the game is to capture or destroy the enemy's base. There are 3 different lanes is the best way to describe it. There's a top lane, a middle lane, and a bottom lane. And then there are sections or like little camps or monsters that are between each of these 3 lanes that are called the jungle. And so you have positions that are the top lane position, the jungle position, mid lane, and then what is called the attack damage carry, or the ADC, and the support. That one is kind of fluid for the ADC now because it's more just bot lane, because they're seeing more than just attack damage. But the idea is that, and typically in the majority of League of Legends, the top lane is like your tanky characters that soak up a lot of damage, that are the front lines in the fights, or that are able to have like a lot of health and armor or magic resistance, and so they can take up a lot of damage in general. The jungle goes around to the other lanes to kind of help them out, so they could be more supportive, or they could be more of the, I want all of the gold and experience, and let me be the carry necessarily. The mid lane is kind of the same thing as a jungler, but in regards of it farms and gets a little bit more gold. And so they can roam around the map and kind of influence other places, or they can completely just dominate their lane opponent and try to like win the game through that. And then the bot lane and the support is typically a glass cannon. And glass cannon is the idea that they do a lot of damage, but they have a very low amount of health. And so they can do a lot of damage in a short amount of time, but that if somebody, the top lane, mid lane, jungler, whoever gets on top of them, then they could die pretty easily, for example. And then the support is the person that is helping, typically in lane, that bot laner through the rest of that lane phase, and then later on helps the team in general with like vision or with crowd control to kind of hold down your opponents, or providing something else to the team. And again, they are more of like, they could be squishy and they have like less health, or they could be a little bit more tanky. There's a large variety. There's over 150 champions right now in the League of Legends, so you can only have one selected champion at a time. And so there's a whole different varieties of how you can run what are called compositions, or how you choose to do 5v5s necessarily. But that's, I would say, in like 3 minutes, the idea of League of Legends itself.
Perfect. Dirk, anything to add to that?
Just kind of like in summary, I guess, just sort of sum it up. Like you said, 5v5 team-based thing. You can think of your traditional sort of like basketball sort of stuff where you have 5 players on the team. The court you can think of as like the map, right? That being said, there's like some nuances where you have like objectives where people basically bring people together in order to contest or like compete for those objectives throughout the game. But like he said, at the end of the day, the main goal is just to defeat or destroy the enemy team's base.
Neat. Cool. Well, that helped further my understanding of it as well. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are familiar with basketball and familiar with like a team sport like that. So that's a good metaphor. So when did you both realize that you were good at this game? And then how did you get involved at such a high level? I mean, you guys are national champions, right?
Right. So for me personally, when I started, like I said, like that 9 or 8 years ago, I wasn't really super active in terms of like playing a lot. I was just kind of playing against like bots, playing against computers, because I didn't know like how good or not. And then I didn't realize this, but so basically at the end of the season, or typically at the end of the year, it's around like November, Riot Games, the major corporation that basically produces League of Legends, will do what's called the ranked season, and the ranked season ends. And so you can be ranked in a ladder from, at the time it was bronze to challenger. So bronze is kind of like, the majority of players are in bronze, silver, or gold. And then the top percentages are in like platinum, diamond, and then challenger at the time, basically. And so for me, I like didn't know about this at all. And so I had like 2 weeks and I tried to like grind out as much as I could. And I got to like high silver at the time. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'm happy with that. Like whatever. I'm just going to try, I didn't know about this and I only had like 2 weeks to play like so many games. So I'm just going to try really hard next season. And the next season I got into platinum. And I didn't really know what that meant at first until I saw a website called op.gg, which kind of tracks your account along with other people. And it showed that I was in kind of like the top 2.5% of people that were playing the game. And I, again, had no recollection whatsoever. And I was like, wow, like I'm kind of good at this game. Like I'm not the best necessarily, like, not in the top 200, but like I'm better than 97% of other people at this game necessarily. So I started getting into individual coaching, that I would coach some friends for, a small amount of money, or I would coach other people online necessarily for, again, a small amount of money. And it slowly started to do that. I was like, I wanted to get involved into a 5v5 situation. I wanted to be part of a team at some point. And I started reaching out to some amateur type teams, and it just didn't work out as well. And so when I transitioned into being a master's student here, I knew about Illini Esports because, again, the same thing with Dirk. I had seen that they had done something, in the collegiate scene for League of Legends. And so I was like, I want to be a part of this team, whether it's me playing on the team necessarily, or being like, a part of the B team necessarily, or if it's, I could be a coach or an analyst or something else that mattered. Even a manager, honestly, I would have been happy with some sort of position to help out with the team and be involved. I was charged with the task of starting up and creating our academy team, which is the idea of you have the main team, which is what Dirk is part of, and then you have the academy team, which is kind of like the JV or junior varsity necessarily for the main team. So that if the main team has a problem or they need a substitute, then you can have that person kind of come up and be that main person. Or at some point when the main people start to graduate, then you have a good selection or a good standing that they've already been experienced in the scene. They kind of know how exactly it's kind of run necessarily. So I've been doing that for the past now 4 years, and we have been successful. We got second place 2 years ago, and obviously we got first place this year. So we've been pretty much in top 5 for the majority of the 4 years that I've been helping out with the academy team itself.
That's fantastic. I love the idea of having a good crop of people that you're working with to bring up as people start to graduate. That's a good system. Right. Dirk, when did you realize you were good?
Maybe I never realized, but
Dirk's like, actually, I'm not good.
Yeah, exactly. But I was like in high school, and I was like good. I was kind of like platinum, right? I was like better than I came from a small school, so like better than everybody at my school, right? So I had a little ego, but by then it was like I was like, how good am I, right? Went to college, saw all the people on the team, and they were like upper echelon, like way above me. And I was like, well, okay. So I decided to try to do like the analyst thing. So I did that for like my first year. And while I was doing all that sort of stuff, I really focused on like my own gameplay and whatnot. And I was like learning all these things from the players and whatnot. And I was like, okay. And so I started to internalize that, and I tried to become better and better and better. And I saw like my rank increase a ton over the past 2 or 3 years. And I've like hit Grandmaster or whatever, which is the rank right below Challenger. And so I've seen an exponential increase, and so yeah, I'm good now.
Awesome.
In the past 3 years, probably.
To follow up on something you said, what exactly does an analyst do? So yeah, we don't always have them. It's kind of like a fluid position where if it was needed, we kind of utilized it. More so, it's sort of been used as like a tool to help the coaches or whatever. So in the early days or weeks or whatever of the program that I joined or the team, I had compiled a bunch of like graphs and spreadsheets and stuff like that. Really, some of the information wasn't super useful, so I tried to provide like some input through gameplay, things I was seeing in professional play and stuff like that to the team in meetings and after scrimmages and whatnot. So overall, I would honestly equate it more to like an assistant coach sort of position at the time, more so than anything else. But yeah, you try to bring in some sort of data and whatnot if you can to help the players. And AJ, could you tell me a little bit about the coaching process and what kinds of like drills you do? Like what goes into coaching?
Right. There's a lot that goes into coaching, I would say, in kind of 3 parts. So there's the part that what we call pick and ban or drafting. And so typically when you're playing the League of Legends or before you even start the game, you have to think about what your enemy team is looking to do. What are they, like what sort of picks or champions do they do really well on or not do so well on, and in terms of what's called the meta. And so there are, as I said, there's 150 champions, but not every single 150 champion or every single champion is viable at that time, right? Some are stronger than others, some are weaker than others, some counter others and are really good in the matchups, and some are kind of just even and they don't really do super well, or they're really good for solo queue and by yourself, but in a competitive environment, they're not as well. So it's a lot of like culminating all of this data and all of this ideas as to what exactly is really good for the meta, and then assuming that your team is really good at that meta, you start to think of, okay, here's what we really value in terms of picks, and you have to pick these in the first like 3 things. Or we think that they're going to pick this, so we're going to start trying to draft out a comp that's going to be different against that. The best way I could describe it is that it's like maybe in baseball, that somebody that swings with a right, he always does a certain pattern, right? Like he always hits at the top necessarily. He doesn't hit at the bottom. Or I don't really know much about baseball, so don't mind me here. But the idea is that you're looking for those patterns that maybe your enemy does or that you do necessarily, to see if there's ways that you can counteract those as much as possible. And then what we go into is then the second part, which is called scrimmages, as Dirk had kind of mentioned. And scrimmages are the idea of kind of like 5v5 practices that you do versus other teams. That could be other collegiate teams, amateur teams, people that are just kind of around your same ranking necessarily as a group average. And then you kind of do practices and you're trying out, certain comps, or you want to try out this new pattern that you're doing in the game itself, or you want to try, these early game compositions that are really good at the first 15 minutes of the game but aren't as good later on, or whatever it comes down to be. That we kind of set goals for each scrim as much as we possibly can and enact on those goals. And then once we get done, we'll kind of review everything. We'll talk about what we did for the day, what were good, what were bad, what were the notes, kind of that information. And then the third part would be the individual tracking of people. So if, let's say, scrimmages are nice, but those take about 3 hours. We do them about 2 to 3 times a week, plus our actual games. So that's another 6 hours for 2 games a week, you assume. And so you're putting a lot of time into these 5v5s. So there's a lot of other time that people could be practicing on what's called mechanics. And so mechanics are just how you exactly play that champion. Or it's almost like if you were going to the batting cage by yourself. And so you're just practicing your swing, or you're trying to, practice against faster swings, slower swings, whatever it comes down to be. So we go into solo queue, and that's by themselves. We want them to practice X, Y, and Z champions. We know that they fit really well into this kind of comp, but by themselves, I want you to practice the ins and outs of this champion. Do you know their cooldowns? Do you know how much damage that they do? Do you know when they spike, when they buy certain items or a level or something else that matters? And so you send them into solo queue so that they can grind out against other players in a 5v5 situation, but it's kind of like you and 4 other random people versus 5 other random people, and then trying to, constantly grind that out. So that's kind of the 3 things that I keep track of in that regard. And then I'm talking with the players about what they feel, how's their ideas. I try to keep emotional support at the same time too, to be like, okay, you got tests coming up. Are you okay? How are you handling this? I know that there was a recently frustrating scrim. What are your thoughts on this? Let's kind of talk it out. And so there's a lot of, it's almost like you're a dad of a team in a way, is the best way that I can describe it. But you're also the mom, and the idea that you're trying to keep everybody organized and keep everybody together. And so it's just kind of there's a good mixture of being the two, basically. So
nice. Well, that's great. It's a whole nother world. There's so much that goes into this, and I'm really enjoying learning about all this stuff. So I guess now I want to jump into this tournament that you guys just absolutely blew everyone out of the water.
Right.
So you said 5-game tournament. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this tournament was Collegiate Star League. They're one of the top collegiate tournament organizers necessarily, and the prize pool was $50,000 and then first place was $20,000 for a team.
Wow.
So it's really good because as of right now, Illinois doesn't have to offer scholarships for esports athletes, and so any sort of scholarship money that we can or any sort of tournament winnings that we can get, it goes directly to the players and to the coaching staff as kind of scholarships necessary.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we were really excited for this. We the goal for this year is we had a really stacked roster, and so the goal has always been win CSL for Academy. Main team, they always want to win CLOL, which is Collegiate League of Legends, and that's sponsored by Riot Games itself. So there are 2 different tournaments where Dirk is on the CLOL type stuff, and then I focus on, and the Academy team focuses on CSL, or the Collegiate Star League. So this Collegiate Star League has been going since, I want to say September, late September, early October, something like that. But you do a round robin style where you are slotted into a conference of schools in your area. So we faced against Indiana, Purdue, I think at one point, University of Chicago, or Illinois at Chicago, Wisconsin-Madison, a couple of other like Midwestern schools, basically. And then the top 2 people from that conference get to go to playoffs, and that started in January, February. And then from playoffs, there were 64 teams with a double elimination bracket, which means that if you happen to lose, you go into a lower bracket and you try to fight your best way through, up until losers finals or lower finals, and then try to win grand finals. And so we got to, I think, the semifinals in the upper part. We unfortunately lost in a best-of-3 series, and so we went to the lower brackets. And then at that same time is when coronavirus hit. And so they put the tournament on hold for the time being until we could figure out what to do or what was sort of the feedback necessarily. And they determined that they would continue play, but that the top 8 teams, which had already been basically decided, would receive an equal share cut of the $50,000 prize pool. So every team, my team included, got $5,750 in total as a team itself. So around $1,000 per player, which was really nice overall.
Yeah.
We have not yet gotten that, but that's kind of besides the point.
It'll happen.
But so basically it then came down to that we were in lower brackets and we were still excited. We still wanted to play. We still wanted to, even if it's just for pride and glory, to be number 1, because our goal was to beat Columbia College, who was a fully scholarship, ex-pro player type team, probably, number, I'd say top 3 in the nation itself, even in the main side of things. And this is our academy facing their main necessarily. So it was going to be a tough opponent. They then decided that they did not want to play anymore. And so when that happened, it kind of like switched for us that, it sucks because we wanted to face these really good opponents and try our best to face them. But at the same time, it literally like cleared the path that no, we were not afraid of anybody else later on that we were going to face basically. And so we ended up facing UT Austin in the finals. And we won the first 2 games versus them. We then lost 2 games because we were trying out different things. And, that's just what happens sometimes. You got to have that back and forth. And so we get to the game 5, and the clip that I had prepared was basically the idea of like we put all the holds out. We went, we got rid of the idea of trying new things. We just went straight back to comfort, trying the best with what we had. And we went, I think, like 19 kills to 2 in like 15 minutes or something like that. And so it was complete slaughter in the last game for our side. And we just completely like wiped through them. And then obviously we got to be CSL champions. So that was it was really nice. It was really wonderful. Sad we weren't able to face the best competition that we were really hoping for necessarily, but really happy that we were still able to come out on top as the number 1. So
awesome. Was there a moment in that game where you realized that it was going to be an absolute slaughter?
So it was game 5, and what we had picked for our overall people was we had picked really comfort champions. Everybody has been playing these champions for a very long time. Typically they would have been banned against us, but the series, when you evolve through a series, there's certain things that you'll change the pick and bans for each team. And so the other team, at the first game, we would not have been able to play this composition because they banned away those certain champions. And then in the 5th game, they changed their bans, so this opened up the opportunity for us to pick new stuff. So we picked these champions, and we got into the game, and our main carry was Dandito on what's a character called Fizz, who looks like a blue fish. The idea of that character is to basically destroy your laner, just absolutely like run a town on them, just like run through them and completely like win through that, and then take your pressure that you have won there to get and go to another lane or fight in team fights. Basically, he basically captures out the enemy team's mid laner on what was unfortunately for her a very lucky, like the minions had crowded around her, so her character model couldn't move at all, or couldn't like back away. And so Dan was just sitting there like poking her and killing her, and finally got the first kill. And as soon as that like carry gets 1 kill, it kind of helps to snowball the rest of the lead, so that it'll just become like a little, snowball becomes bigger, bigger, bigger. So we use that term snowball, and he snowballed his lead to go into other lanes and just completely destroy it. And then we got to a a 5v5 dragon fight where we saw them going for one of the objectives that Dirk was talking about. And we collapsed on them, and I believe that we got like 3 or 4 kills out of it, and literally nobody, like one person died. But that we had gotten the dragon, we had gotten the objective, we got a bunch of kills. We started like again getting that snowball lead, and then once we got into that, I was like, it's game over. It doesn't matter. Like there's literally at that point it just becomes our game to lose. And so we had the idea, we had what we needed to do. We just needed to close out the game from there, and we did. So.
So I just realized that we have only 7 minutes left in this meeting. So I'm going to ask you guys a couple more questions, and then I guess we have to wrap it up. So in terms of your gaming experience overall, and especially your experience with Illini Esports, what have you taken away from all of this as a person? I want to ask both of you this.
I definitely think that as I start to move towards like a more professional like career and whatnot, I think the thing I look back on the most is the interpersonal like relationships and connections. So, I mean, AJ can speak to it because I think he's done a great job at like the coach position. He mentioned briefly that like emotional support sort of thing, but I really think in general that like most of our coaches or ever are pretty tailored towards, or they really want to help. Right, even though they're like pretty much the same age as us, they really want to help, and that has sort of transferred down to me as a player and whatnot. And I really think that like even though we obviously, just like any team, have issues sometimes and whatnot, working through those issues, solving those problems, working together, achieving a common goal, and then having a goal in the first place is such a really good like idea that like you strive for every single day. You're practicing and whatnot together to try to achieve that goal, and it's really inspiring and translates, and hopefully we'll see that success in my real life too. Yeah.
That's
and then
great.
For me, it's been really difficult because this is most likely going to be my last year as a coach right now. I've just been spending more time in the PhD process, that it's, you have to spend more time focusing on school and kind of getting things together. So I don't really know what my future is for coaching right now. And I've kind of been bringing up my assistant coach to be my replacement necessarily. And so it's kind of bittersweet because this has been the best year that we've had by far in the past 4 years necessarily. But it's also really sad because it's like, that you're going to be winding down and you're going to be going on to different things. And so for me, it's like, I always remember, like when we went 2 years ago, when we flew out to Cali together as a team to, stay and compete in a live event and kind of do that aspect like that, for me is something that I can never live down, or just being able to be friends with other players that, even though I'm 25, I still feel like I'm connected well to the team, and I'm a little bit older than the majority of the other people on the team necessarily, but I feel like I can mess around and goof around and talk with everybody and kind of converse with them as though they were just, I had grown up with them necessarily, right? And so that's always something that I'm going to at least remember myself. So.
Fantastic. And this is our audience for this video is incoming freshmen. So if there is an incoming freshman who wants to get involved, what would you say to them?
Right. Sorry, Bosch, go ahead.
I think regardless of whether or not you're really good at League of Legends, regardless of whether you're just starting or if you just like to play video games at all, there's a space for you at Illini Esports. You don't have to be the best player because we have tons and tons of thousands of people that just enjoy playing games. And at the end of the day, if you are really good, sure. I mean, there's plenty of teams that'll take you, not only League of Legends, plenty of other sports or esports as well. But that being said, just feel free to get involved, join us, and that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that same sentiment. Illini Esports is the place at U of I for anything esports related. We have multiple events that you can get involved with, and the idea of, if you just want to sit and watch some stuff, we're going to be having multiple events to watch, like World Finals or big games necessarily in the pro scene. We always try to have like a Twitch watch party for any of our teams if they're competing in a tournament. We try to do that as well. No matter what it comes down to, as Dirk kind of mentioned, it's the idea that, if you want to get involved, there's a place for you, and we are more than happy to get you involved and ready and going. It doesn't matter if you're really good at the game or if you're really bad. We have a wide variety, and that's perfectly fine. As long as you have fun and you're building connections and having, making some friends at the end of the day, then I'm happy to play some games no matter what it comes down to. So
Fantastic. Oh, this has just been so wonderful. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you.